Welcome to When People Pray. This is just a YouTube channel that is describing what happens when people pray. And I encourage you to hit the subscribe and the like button. When you do that, it bumps up the algorithms, and the more people that subscribe, the more we can get the word out. What we're going to be doing on this channel is we're going to interview different intercessors around the world, prayer leaders, those who have been in the prayer ministry. And the goal is to encourage you, to strengthen your faith, and to really to spur you on in your prayer walk. I know with myself, there's been times when I've been a little on the discouraged side. And when I start hanging out with people like my friend Olga, I'll be interviewing, it really encourages me to keep going, to keep moving forward and not to give up. How I met Olga is, I think it was, I don't know how many years ago it was. I was in Kansas City and I was seeking the Lord because I knew that I was called to start a house of prayer here in Hartford. And I had no idea how to start it, what I was doing, if I'm even the right. In fact, I was arguing with the Lord. I'm not the right person. Because everybody I met who started prayer houses were either youth pastors or dynamic young couples that knew what they were doing. They had been in ministry. I also have been in ministry for many years, but here I am, a middle-aged single woman with not even 2 pennies to rub together, and not really, I don't consider myself having a hugely dynamic, charismatic personality where I draw a lot of people, but I am someone who loves to pray. And anyway, I went to IHOP and I was sitting in the prayer room. I think I was sitting like 10 hours a day in there. And all of a sudden I get a little tap on my shoulder, turn around, and there's this beautiful woman there. She goes, "Oh, you're here. I'm so glad to see you." And so we ran out and we started talking, catching up. We had been going to church together quite a few years, and we knew each other from church. And I know that Pastor Rick, our pastor, had strongly recommended to me to meet Olga and to talk to her, become friends with her. And he didn't have to encourage me. It was just so cool because we became good friends. And Olga and I had been praying together off and on these past several years. And right at the right time in my life, just when I needed to hear some encouragement and some loving, Olga would call or text me, "Hey, you want to pray?" And oh, praise God for Olga. So thank you so much for being my friend, for encouraging me. And I pray that this video would be an encouragement to others as you talk and share your heart with others. So I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
And the first question I wanted to have you share is, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got saved, a little bit of your history. Just share what's on your heart right now, how you came to the place where you are now.
Sure. Well, I'll just say hello to everyone. I am Olga Calvo Tergolino. If you want that in Italian, it's Olga Calvo Tergolino.
You just got married.
I just got married. It was Olga Calvo, and I tacked on a Tergolino. And I am Sicilian American. And the way I got saved was absolutely, I'm so grateful to the Lord because it's absolutely supernatural. I mean, it always is, but I'm so grateful for my story. I grew up in a Sicilian family, and when I was around 5 years old, I had a dream about Jesus. Now, I never went to church. My father he had a lot of angst against, the church. He was in a religious boarding school. So he was not in favor of anything God related. And my mom, I would say, was nominally Catholic, but we never went to church. God was not a part of our lives that as we, lived it out that we knew of. But when I was probably around 5 years old, I had a dream about Jesus. And in the dream, I was on my knees in the mud and I was digging furiously. I knew that I had a task I had to complete. And it was, I think, to dig to a certain depth. But as I did it, as I tried and tried and tried, and I'm covered in mud at this point, the more I realized that there was no way I could complete the task. So I'm sitting there on my knees in the mud. I'm hopeless because I know the task is impossible. And then I look up from the task and I realize the task is so much larger than I even recognized. That the task, like the thing I had to dig, was actually multiplied to like the thousands, if not millions, all the way into the horizon. So not only was the task in front of me impossible, but now looking ahead, I'm in utter despair. And as I'm, on my knees in despair, these clouds roll in, and Jesus is on the clouds. Now, you think I'm 5 years old. I don't know anything about the book of Daniel where the Son of Man comes in on the clouds, but I knew that he was God, and I knew his name was Jesus. And he looked at me with the kindest eyes. And as he looked at me, he took a lightning bolt and he threw it down with force. And the minute it touched the ground, he completed the task for me.
Wow.
And I looked up in gratitude. And then the dream was over. And so from that moment, I always knew there is a God. His name is Jesus, and he's my friend. So that was always, and so I always talked about God. I always talked to God. Ever since I was a little girl, I was I was different than, my family members, but I really appreciate my mom. She never shut me down. Whenever I would talk about God, or I would talk about even now I look back and think, some words of knowledge or prophetic beginnings, my mom always would look at me kind of quizzically and she would say, I think God has something for you, like something about your life. And never said, oh, that's, nonsense or anything like that. And so I would say then I don't have a date of salvation, but I would say when I truly surrendered from that childlike, Jesus is my friend, let me go play with my Barbies, to a real solid relationship was as a teenager. I walked myself to youth group. Again, my family was not, no one was saved, but I found a youth group and I walked to it. And the youth group leader challenged us to read the word and to journal on it, to read the Gospels and to journal. And he said this thing that was a hook for me because I was very seeking affirmation. He said, I'm going to look at your journals, and I want to see those journals. And I thought, oh, I'm going to show him the best journal he's ever seen in his life. He's going to be thrilled by my theological insight. So I open up the Gospels for the first time and I start reading about this man, Jesus, and I fell in love. I was probably around 13, and all I did was cry and read the word and cry and read the word over that summer break. In fact, my mom a few years ago, she was like, remember when you were like 13 and didn't go hang out with your friends over the summer, just read the Bible? That was so weird. so that's
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Praise God. Oh, wow. He's so good. So how did you hear the call to pray, to spend that time in prayer and as an intercessor?
In 2010, I was in a pretty dark moment in my life. I had so I'm a psychotherapist by training, and still to this day keep up my license. So I'm a therapist, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I was working in the field, and I was pretty burnt out by 2010 of just some very hard things that had happened. Just in the line of work, you get vicariously traumatized by hearing people's trauma all day. People don't go to therapy to tell you the good news. So I'm pretty burnt out. And then on top of that, I was in a serious relationship. We were talking about getting married, and then we broke up. That's the state of where I am in 2010. And I heard about a Christian conference that was coming to town. I didn't know anything about the organization. It was IHOP KC, the International House of Prayer, had taken their conferences on the road to something they called the One Thing Regionals. So I just heard there was a Christian conference. I knew I needed refreshing, so I went. And the last night, there was a keynote speaker named Lou Engle. I had never heard of him before. And he was preaching, and he's rocking back and forth, and he's calling young people to fast and to pray. And I don't think I'd ever fasted in my life. Um, and, I prayed, but mostly out of desperation, God, give me strength to get through today because I'm so burnt out. I was a dutiful prayer.
Mhm.
Uh, and I heard not the audible voice, but a really loud voice on the inside say two things. And the voice said, "You are a forerunner." And I didn't know what that meant. Like the car, I didn't know. And then the other thing that the voice said was, "Go to IHOP." And I immediately said, "Oh, no, no, no. I know what's going on. Me, the therapist, I know what's going on. Everyone will sign up for everything at a conference because of groupthink, and I'm just trying to escape my miserable life right now and run off somewhere." And so I avoided I just kind of pushed it aside as I'm depressed and that's why I'm thinking this. Well, for the next 3 months, I consistently hear, "Go to IHOP, go to IHOP,
Mm.
go to." I mean, I'm cleaning the bathroom, go to IHOP. I'm in a session with the clients, go to IHOP. And at the end of 3 months, I was in a bad spot because of the breakup. Well, it gets worse because 3 months after we break up, the guy gets married to someone.
Oh,
And so I'm in a terrible place at this point emotionally. And a friend of mine asked me to go to a prayer meeting. You're not doing so well. Let's go to a prayer meeting. So we drive 40 minutes away to a prayer meeting. And at the end of the prayer meeting, the leader said, he came up to me and he said, "You're a new face around here. Would you mind if we prayed for you?" Sure. Are you okay with, prophetic words if we do that? Sure. So they start praying. And up to that point, it was some of the most accurate words of knowledge I'd ever heard. I mean, this group comes around me and starts praying. And they say, "You just got through a really bad breakup. This is what happened. This is why it wasn't your." I mean, I was, astounded.
wow.
And at the end of all of that, God gets my attention with the words of knowledge. They said, "Does IHOP mean anything to you?"
Oh, no. Wow.
So I knew
Mhm.
then, okay, I know. Okay, God, you have my attention.
Yeah.
But being a rather cautious woman, I would say, I didn't know, well, okay, something about IHOP is significant for me, but what about it? And so for the next 2 years, I pray, "Lord, what is it?"
Mhm.
And during the course of those 2 years, now before that, I was a very ambitious woman. I, you know, just had a lot of ambition for career, for that kind of thing. Over the course of the next 2 years of praying about IHOP, all of that ambition just got switched off like a faucet, just like closing shut,
Wow.
you know.
Wow.
And all I wanted to do was to be an intercessory missionary. I didn't even know what that meant. But I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. And it was difficult to not do that. To do what I was doing as a therapist was difficult. And so it came to a point finally at the end of 2 years where I couldn't take it anymore. And I said, "Lord, I'm going to go visit this place and we need to shut this thing down. I can't live this way anymore." I just felt the heavy hand of the Lord on me. And so I went, and I mean, that was the initial call. Would you like me to go into then what cemented?
Yes, please.
So I go to IHOP for 8 days, I think it was. And in the middle of those 8 days, I just saw it as a retreat seeking answers. I have a dream.
Mhm.
And in the dream, I I was in bed in the dream, and I sit up and I'm clutching my blanket. And I look to the side of my bed and there's a bus, and on the side of the bus it says International House of Prayer. And it's idling, it's by the side of my bed, and it's waiting. And because I hesitate and I just stare at the bus and I don't get onto the bus, it takes off without me.
Mhm.
And it takes off fast. And
Wow.
it goes and it disappears over the horizon. And I was left in that bed clutching that blanket, that security blanket. I think that can represent so many things in our lives that you're
Mhm.
clutching to, whether that's your finances, your profession, your security, whatever you think that is. And I'm in that bed, and I knew I was supposed to be on that bus, and I knew another one wasn't coming for me. And
Oh,
I was filled with regret, that dreadful regret you feel in the pit of your stomach. That's what I was filled with. And so when I woke up from that dream, I was like, I actually said, Lord, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I understand. Like, don't miss the bus,
yeah.
which is interesting. If some people may know the prophetic history of IHOP, some may not, but there is, and I didn't know at the time, there is a significant a prophetic word about a bus and Jesus being the leader of the IHOP bus. And so I didn't know that at the time. So that was the time I decided to go. And so within, I think, 3 months, I closed my practice. I had a private practice, re-referred all my clients elsewhere, and I went off to IHOP to do an internship.
Wow. That's awesome. And you were not a kid when you did that. You were not a young girl or anything. You were already
Yeah.
established in your profession, and you were, you were going places, you were doing things, and to let all of that go, and just to, and then to obey and to listen to that call. That's so amazing.
Honestly, Audrey, I say this honestly. People have said that to me over the years, and I was like, I actually don't see it as amazing. It was desperation. Like, I knew that the heavy hand of the Lord was on me, and I could not live this way. People would they would say to me all the time, "Oh, wow, you have your own private practice." And, I was 32 when I left. But people just, were, wow, that's so amazing. You left it all.
Mhm.
Honestly, like, I don't regret a thing. It was so desiring to be in the will of God and knowing
Mhm.
that that was it. It's an honor. Honestly, it feels like I don't regret it for a millisecond. Have I regretted it?
Wow, that is so awesome. That is so encouraging. Yes, those of us who hear the Lord in our middle years or even our early adult years, in not when you're just starting out in life, that is so encouraging. I know with myself, I heard the voice of the Lord when I was 40, in my 40s, and hearing God calling me to a deeper walk with him. And then I knew he also revealed to me that I was called to leadership, and then step by step. But I was in my 50s. I think I was in my 50s before I really acted upon what I was seeing the Lord calling me to do. So yes, we need to, don't feel like you're too old or too young or too whatever. When God calls you, go and do it. Yeah,
Just
that's so cool.
so worth it.
So worth it. So worth it. So I'm another question I want to ask you is, can you share one of the powerful answers to prayer, or a powerful encounter you had that came as a result of an answer to prayer?
Oh, absolutely. It's my joy to talk about this. So I would say the greatest answer to prayer I have seen thus far in my life is regarding my sister. So whereas I had the trajectory of, being a little girl, having a dream about Jesus, all of that, me and my sister, we took two different routes, let's say. And by the time, I prayed 19 years for my sister's salvation. And there was, definitely some difficult, strained relationship between us, because I loved Jesus, and she was at a place at that point in her life where if I put my hand on someone to pray and she was in the room, she was very disturbed by that. If it was a family member, if she was present, she was disturbed. She would get this look in her eyes. We did, I could not bring up God without there being big tension, and that was hard because he's such a big part all of my life. um 2013, my sister has a very serious accident. She falls the equivalent of about 3 stories, and is disabled.
Mm.
She was a successful woman up until then. She was teaching at a university. She was an actress in theater, and was really gaining a lot in her career, awards, and she was doing quite well. And in the middle of this, she falls during a performance, falls, and she ends up with a traumatic brain injury. She's cognitively impaired. Her body is broken. And my parents have to take care of her the next 2.5 years. She spends about, I would say, about 23 hours in bed. Learned eventually to, walk to the bathroom and back, basically. And that was her life. And it was so bad with the traumatic brain injury and the cognitive impairment, but she also couldn't allow any light to get into her eyes without causing horrendous migraines for days and days and days. Horrendous. And she couldn't allow sound to get into her ears. So imagine, living a life where everything has to be dark, blackout curtains, dark glasses, sound. You can't listen to TV, you can't listen to radio, you can't have friends come over, no one can read a book to you. You can't read. She couldn't even see at this point. She saw it double and blurry. So she wanted to die. And she and I had been praying and praying and praying for my sister, for her salvation, for, like I said, 19 years. Well, anyway, she gets to a place in that desperation of just wanting to die in her broken body, her broken brain. And she decides that she's going to listen to a podcast, even though on the lowest volume, once a week. And she knows she's going to suffer migraines for days because of it, but she knew she needed something to hang on to that would give her hope. And so she turned on a preacher, and she listened to him. It was actually Joel Osteen. I know for some that could be controversial, but she listened to him once a week, one podcast. And at the end of his podcast, he gives an invitation to give your life to Jesus. And she did. One day she did. Wow. And right after that, she heard a voice audibly say, "You're going to be healed soon." And at that, my sister's salvation is absolutely miraculous. But then what ends up happening after is out of this world. I sensed from the Lord around that time that I was supposed to bring her to IHOP and start caring for her. My parents had been caring for her full time for 2.5 years. And I just kind of felt like it was better that I take that on for a variety of reasons. And so I went and I got her from Connecticut, and I brought her to Kansas City, and I started to get people at the house of prayer to pray for her, praying inside rooms, praying in their own, coming to the apartment, laying hands on her and praying. And one day, I had a couple of friends come. They're from the healing rooms, Brian and Moira, and they came, they laid hands on her, they prayed, they left, and they were like, "Well, we tried, Well, the next day, and this is one of the most glorious moments of my life till now, the next day, my sister wakes up and she's crying. And I'm thinking, pain management, what do I do? What do I do to help her with the pain? And she looks at me and she says, "I can see." And she hadn't been able to see for 2.5 years.
Wow.
You can see? And then after that, 3 days of just signs, wonders, miracles. My sister's body and her mind, her brain are restored. She's jumping on furniture and dancing and moving her body, whereas, she had only lain in a bed for 2.5 years. And she could see, she could hear, she sang worship, she screamed, Jesus is the God of the universe, and he lives in me.
Wow.
There's probably 3 hours worth of story. She actually wrote a manuscript, maybe one day will be a book, of all the miracles and signs and wonders that happened from then. For the next 3 months, we had an open heaven in our apartment. And it was just, I would say, to sum up, that answer to prayer, Audrey, I remember, and I go back to this moment whenever I doubt, whenever I forget, I go back to this. There was a moment where all of this happened with my sister, healed in a moment. She's encountering Jesus in ways. She's having visions and encounters with Jesus. My sister who had been an atheist.
Mm.
She is, he's revealing the word to her, though she had never read the word. I mean, it was just astounding. And I just went with my face in the carpet and I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And all I could think, and I felt like it's something I knew with my head, but my heart connected. Anything is possible. Anything is possible.
Amen.
God is the God of the impossible. Yes. And so that, I would say, the greatest, power encounter, the greatest thing that I am eternally grateful to him. God does not fail.
Amen. He does not fail. Wow. And I just have one more question, and this will be the last one. And can you share any words of encouragement? I know that you had been doing had your own YouTube channel, I think, or you've been doing words of encouragement every like a 10 or a 15-minute video. And I know I was encouraged by many of the things that you shared. So is there anything that you would like to share with us just to encourage those people who are tuning into this?
Sure. A lot of things. I really am grateful to Mike Bickle and just the little nuggets he's given over the years. But I would say the things that encourage me is, one, every intercessor goes through the mundane. Mm-hmm. Yes, we do get healings here that happen at IHOP. Yes, I lived, phenomenal healing power encounter with my sister, but we all go through the mundane. Mm-hmm. Everyone. Mike Bickle. We all get to a place at times where it feels dry. We all get to a place where it feels dull or boring. And I would say one thing that I learned from him is never underestimate the power of a 5-second prayer. Even a 5-second prayer. Sometimes people come to me and they say, wow, you prayed fervently for your sister for 19 years. I was like, actually, most of the time it felt really weak. Most of the time it was kind of like, if I were to be honest, it would be like, Jesus, help her come to know you. But even she might be a hard case for you. That kind of prayer, of like, I don't even know if I believe that this could ever happen in my lifetime. So don't underestimate the power of even a 5-second prayer. I mean, the power of God in that. The other thing is to be really, our call is to Psalm 27:4. Our call is to behold him in his beauty. That is our number one, like to enjoy God, delight in him, worship him, be with him. And from there, intercession flows. We cannot sustain intercession without beholding him, without looking at him and being with him and just enjoying him, because it's too burdensome. It's too exhausting. We cannot sustain it. So I would say that first, intercession second. I would say that is my biggest thing. So if I were to say anything, don't underestimate, even in the mundane, number one, keep at it, even the 5 seconds. And number two, just behold him. Just look at him, read Psalm 27:4. That's the one thing that we desire. It's not to intercede, it's to behold him in his beauty. And then go.
Yes, that's one of my favorite verses. One thing have I asked of the Lord, and that, just to behold him. Yes. Yeah, I think I saw it written on the walls at IHOP, and that's where it really captivated my attention. Yeah, and like caught my heart. Like, that's what it is. I want to behold him, just to see you. Oh, to see you. And that carries us even through the mundane, even through the most difficult of times. It can carry you. I just so agree with that. That's ministers to me again and again.
Me too. I signed back up again on Friday about this. I was like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to behold him. Forgot.
That's true. That is so true. So thank you so much for this time, just taking the time just to share your heart with us, and may God richly bless you. I just pray, Lord, that you bless Olga and her new husband, their new marriage, and I pray that they would be fruitful and multiply, you would give Olga especially the desires of her heart. She has been such a faithful warrior. She's been such a faithful intercessor in your kingdom, Lord, and a forerunner. And Lord, as she has so faithfully given, I pray that you would just pour out and she would receive, oh God, that there would be so many blessings that you would pour into her. Bless her husband, oh God, and just guide them, lead them in the next season in their lives, Lord. I pray this all in your precious name. Amen.
Thank you.
Yes, so God bless you. Take care.
Ciao.
Ciao.